is giving a talk at the math colloquium here, CMSA, at the ground, the basement auditorium, and his talk will be about black holes and naked singularities. And I guess whoever is interested in naked singularities, that would be very interesting to hear.
Black holes also.
Well, we know about black holes. But naked singularities are dangerous to the rest of us if they're not protected from us by horizon. Okay, so do we have everyone? Can we start? Thank you all for coming. This is a special forum that we hold on a sad occasion that Stephen Hawking passed away. I just wanted to say a few words because Stephen was very important for us here at the Black Hole Initiative. As you know, he came for the inauguration in April 2016. And in my mind, in my view, Stephen embodies the superiority of mind over matter in two ways. One, that he was able to overcome all the physical difficulties, and second, in the way that he was able to understand the deepest secrets of nature with his brilliant mind. We often think about reality as given, but we forget about the fact that the limitations that reality imposes depend on how we treat it, what our attitude towards it is. And Stephen was never discouraged or depressed by his extreme disability. He always thought and operated as anyone else. And even beyond that, that's quite remarkable that he was able to achieve so much, more than any other scientist. And so, you know, if you're put in prison, you can still have a free mind. I mean, a good example is Mandela in Africa that was put in prison for many years. And you can think of Stephen as being put in a situation that also does not allow him physically to escape from, but nevertheless, with his mind, he was able to go out. And I think, you know, if you think about it poetically, a black hole is thought to be the ultimate prison, that you can check in but can never check out, classically. But what Stephen showed is that even this situation of the ultimate prison is not really prison. Light can escape from it. So his most important discovery is sort of a metaphor to his personal life, in a way that even black holes are not really black, you can escape from them. The last thing that I wanted to mention about Stephen is that, as many of you know, he didn't get a Nobel Prize because his ideas that were extremely important in the development of 20th century and 21st century physics were not verified experimentally or observationally. But in a way, he demonstrated that the Nobel Prize doesn't really matter for the impact that a physicist can have on both the physics community and on society, and how irrelevant prizes are, in a way, compared to the intellectual content of what one does during one's lifetime. So these are the comments I wanted to make, but we are very fortunate to have with us for a sabbatical Malcolm Perry, that worked very closely with Stephen for many years, and most recently, over the past few years, together with Andy Strominger, they tried to crack the information paradox with Stephen, Malcolm wanted to share with us some photos that were taken over the years and some anecdotes.
Well, thank you very much, Andy. So my connection with Stephen is simply that I became his graduate student way back in 1974. And so what I'd like to do is to show you a little bit about how things were back then and how they've developed since. So the place to start is the beginning. And here we have a picture of Stephen, a few months old. He was born in Oxford, but brought up in St Albans. I don't really know very much about what happened to Stephen before he got to university, but some things are apparent immediately. He was educated at St Albans School, which has a very, very long history in physical science. It was founded in the year 948. It had two people who were important in physical science there at some point. One was Alexander Neckham. That was way back in approximately 1170. He was important because he brought the idea of the compass to Europe. He did researches in magnetism and optics. The second important physicist from St Albans was Richard of Wallingford. He was actually the abbot of St Albans Abbey and was closely connected with the school. He's important as a clockmaker and a mathematician. There was then a little bit of a lull till Stephen got there. So at school, the teachers at school thought that Stephen was really rather an average student. His contemporaries, however, thought that he was a genius, and they nicknamed him Einstein as a consequence. At University College, Oxford, where he went as an undergraduate student, the situation was rather similar. He was thought to be a mediocre student. He reckoned himself that he only did 1,000 hours work in the entire 3 years that he was there. That amounts to about an hour a day. And he eventually graduated, but had a slight obstacle, which was that they couldn't decide whether to give him a first-class degree or a second-class degree. The first-class degree, he said, well, if I get a first-class degree, I will go to Cambridge, because Cambridge has ambitious standards. But if you give me a second-class degree, I'll stay in Oxford. So there was an oral exam, which is very unusual in Oxford. That means they really couldn't decide what to do. And so they gave him a first, thereby making the worst mistake they've ever made. But graduate he did, and here is a picture of him graduating. Now, if you look at this picture, you will still say, well, this is just an average student who's done sort of really rather well. He's obviously very clever because after 1,000 hours work, he was able to get a first, which is great. But you might think, what did he do with the rest of his time? And the answer is clear, the boat club. So, Stephen, you can see right here. And this is the boat club at graduation, behaving as boat clubs do. So he became a graduate student in Cambridge. He wanted to work with Fred Hoyle, but Fred Hoyle was too busy, and so he ended up with Dennis Sharma. And that's probably one of the best things that could possibly have happened. Dennis was amazingly good at training PhD students. So other obvious PhD students of his around the same time were Brandon Carter and Martin Rees. So that was good. But whilst he was at Cambridge, it became absolutely clear that the disease that he has, ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, was taking its toll. And he did become rather depressed, but eventually he plucked up his courage and married Jane. And so here is Jane Wilde, as she was, on the day of their wedding. So let's move on to when I first met him. I first met him after doing Part 3 mathematics in Cambridge. He decided that he wanted to see me as a possible graduate student. I thought that what was going to happen to me was that I'd end up as doing usual kind of particle physics things that people do. But he convinced me that that was not true. I should come and work with him. This is a picture of the way he was around 1976, which is a bit later. So I went and talked to him. It was rather hard, but decided that working on black holes would be a good idea. So the very first seminar I went to, which was a few days afterwards, he presented for the first time his work on thermal radiation from black holes. And that was quite an experience. First of all, the result was astonishing, a truly interesting presentation. The second fact, which Cambridge, of course, is a big university, and there were only 8 people in the seminar, which strikes me as extraordinary. I'll tell you who they were. The first person that comes to mind, apart from myself, is Patrick Mccarthy. And you'll all say, who is Patrick Mccarthy? But he was actually a specialist in the Bondi Messner sax group, and that has some resonance. Sadly, he is no longer with us. And then there were a collection of young people, as they were at the time: Stephen Siklos, Gary Gibbons, Alan Lapidis. They're all practicing scientists right now. Nick Toop, who managed to get a PhD, and a very strange person called Rio Fortune. Rio Fortune was an anthropologist. He was, in fact, Margaret Mead's second husband, but he didn't last long in that position. He came to every seminar, and we suspect, but not certain, that he was studying us. And the alternative is not such a nice idea. He was just plain mad. So,
are those the only two alternatives?
Yes.
Well, you can think of some others, and it could be both true. So Stevens then said, well, I think what you should do is look at the no-hair theorems, which was astonishingly prescient. What he had in mind was asking the question as to whether or not Bekenstein's treatment of no-hair theorems was correct. But in actual fact, it was exactly the right question to ask, and it has taken me rather a long time to get anywhere with it.
Bekenstein or Israel?
Bekenstein. He was concerned about Bekenstein. We could go into a story about that. But, so the next thing that happened, a couple of months later, was that he went to Caltech and I didn't. And that's sort of unfortunate, because the only way we could communicate was by telephone. And in those days, telephone calls to the United States from England were expensive, which caused trouble with the accountants. And Stephen's voice was not exactly clear at the time, which made that even if you did manage to talk to him, you wouldn't understand much of what he was saying. So that was rather hard. He came back a year later, and at that point, it really took me about a year to learn to understand him. So in the third year of being a graduate student, we actually managed to write a paper together, and this intellectual relationship carried on from there. It's sort of interesting to see exactly what it was like in those days. So here is a picture of our seminar room. As you can see, it contains a table. This picture was taken by Don Page in 1979, but it really doesn't make much difference. Throughout the 70s, things were like this. Don is standing where the blackboard is. And this room is, well, microscopic. As you can see, there are a large number of people there compared to the way things were in 1974 when I started, reflecting the fact that Stephen's fame was growing. Here is Stephen at a seminar around that time.
So the Einstein static universe so it's really a sort of cylinder with the time being the axis. No, it just so happens that we have the universe here. Unfortunately, we were unable to get the full four-dimensional universe in here. But the boundary of antikythera space is a time-like hypersurface. And that leads to an important difference.
Crystal clear.
So that was an extract from a seminar given by Chris Hull, given by Stephen and interpreted by Chris Hull, who is clearly having a hard time. But what you can see from this is that, first of all, Stephen's voice was very distorted in those days before he got the computer. And it really did take a very long time to learn to understand it. And that was something of an obstacle. Nevertheless, his fame was growing at this point, and I think that we should just think a little bit about how he is here. Obviously, he has a sense of humour, because he's teasing Chris about getting the universe upside down, and not having a room big enough to fit the universe in. So you can see that he's beginning to show a sort of impish character. And you want to think about the work that he'd done in this state up till now. He did work on the singularity theorems, and in particular cosmological singularity theorems. By this point he'd done most of his work on black holes, the discovery of the area theorem, the laws of black hole mechanics, the idea that black holes produce thermal radiation, the discovery that black holes really do have an entropy of a quarter of the area of the event horizon, and he had discovered the information paradox. Subsequently, of course, he did work on quantum cosmology and things like quantum fluctuations in the early universe, which he is really quite famous for. So, an example of his fame, here is a meeting that took place in 1979 in San Francisco, and you can see that there are a large number of very well-known people here. Perhaps some of them aren't so recognisable these days, but we can start with Stephen. On Stephen's left there is Singer, Philip Candelas, then Gary Gibbons, and going round, Dennis Sharma, Frank Yang, Steve Christensen, Lowell Brown, Leonard Parker, John Wheeler, David Boulware, Dan Friedman, Bill Unruh, Bryce DeWitt, Bob Wald, Steve Fulling, Roman Jakeith, John Schwartz, Stan Deser, Claudio Teitelboim, Steve Adler, Sergio Ferrara, Gerard Tuft, and Bruno Zumino, so he'd obviously got the right friends at this point. That was taken, I guess, that was in 1979. Stephen loved to travel. Here is a picture of Stephen with Andy Strominger and Gary Horowitz, taken in April 1993. And as you can see, he's always having a great time. I think the thing to do is to move on a little bit to a later part of his life, for the very simple reason we've got lots of photographs of him there. Up until this point there aren't so many photographs. So this is him on his 60th birthday. He's just outside the new mathematics building in Cambridge. So this must have been taken in January, and as you can see it's wet, as you would always expect it. This is a picture of, again, on his 60th birthday. And you can see this collection of people are his PhD students up to that point. So there's a fantastic number of them. The only one who isn't is this one, and that's who was born. As you can see, Stephen likes fun and likes girls. This must be Marilyn Monroe's sister or daughter or something. And there is obviously very pleased by her presence at this dinner in his honour. Here he is on his own, posing. Here he is with the Edge. If you don't know who the Edge is, it doesn't matter. Just think rock star. Well, I guess you should think rock stars in plural, because there seems to be more than one of them there. Stephen being the other one. And this sort of shows that, he isn't just about science. He's about having fun in all kinds of places. And whilst he is a great ambassador for science, he wants to do other things and really live a full life. The idea that he had motor neuron disease was something that was not going to deter him from doing other things. This is a great picture. There is yet another girl showed up, but over here, you've already seen a picture of this lady. This is Stephen's mother, and at the time she was approximately 90-something. And
Where was this?
In King's College in Cambridge. This is the entertainment at that dinner.
Can-Can girls.
Can-Can girls. Well, kind of. Now, this is a meeting that took place at a place called Cook's Branch. About 12 or 13 years ago, George Mitchell, not the one who was a senator, but the one who invented fracking, was a great supporter of Texas A&M University, established a fund basically to support Stephen in all kinds of ways. So one thing that we did was to organise annual meetings. So this is, I think, the second annual meeting. There are lots of people here that you might recognise. I'll point one of them out. This is Chris Pope from Texas A&M University. He is the only other person I've been able to find who is a physicist who was at St Albans School. So this meeting was the second of many meetings, has been taking place annually, and there will be one this September in Stephen's memory. George Mitchell was a graduate of Texas A&M University, and so he tried to attract Stephen to Texas as a professor. Of course, that didn't work, but nevertheless thought that this was the best thing he could do. He would arrange a sort of program of meetings between people in Cambridge and people in Texas. These meetings were basically around Stephen, and basically the idea is you get Stephen's friends to come. So these things took place in Cook's Branch, which was George Mitchell's country estate. It was 6,000 acres, which is about 60 miles north of Houston. Here's a few more of these people, including me, it would seem. Stephen with Jim Hartle, Don Page, and Thomas Hertog, showing that we do some work occasionally. And this is Stephen with George Mitchell. At this point, George is about 90 years old. He is the person responsible for these meetings. George Mitchell, I think, at this point had just arrived, interrupting Jim Hartle's lecture. So we have an audience. Slightly more relaxed audience. You can see Stephen staring intently at something. Stephen liked to travel in style. So the problem is that to get him to Texas in those days, he couldn't really take commercial flights because it was simply too dangerous to his health. So we rented private jets for him. And here it is. You should always travel in style. I recommend it. I've done it once. This, I think, is... I guess this must be in Texas. Well, slightly.
It is in Texas.
It is in Texas. This is breakfast. Stephen had a healthy appetite, as you can see. Maybe it's not quite clear what he's about to eat from that. Here it is. So as you see, he has a healthy appetite for many things. This is a view of George's estate, just outside the main building. And again, you can see a little bit of work might be going on. George was proud of his estate and wanted to show Stephen what it was about. And of course, it was very hard for Stephen to get around in a wheelchair on a country estate with no real roads. So George had a carriage lying around, and an old horse, to pull Stephen around. They took a tour of the entire property. And here is Stephen and George again. And then here I think is a nice picture of Stephen. The evenings had campfires, you can see a lot of smoke. And perhaps someone seems to be drinking quite a lot. I don't know who that is. This is Sheridan, who is George Mitchell's daughter, and is keeping things going in terms of our meetings. Again, another picture of that meeting taking place. The time came when Stephen could no longer travel intercontinentally, and so we moved the meetings to a country house near Hereford on the Welsh-English borders. This is the interior of the first house that we'd found. This is Great Brampton House. And you can see prominently Andy and myself and Stephen. Andy had just given a seminar on the Bondi, Metzner, Sachs group, and we sort of thought at this point that this had something to do with, well, we didn't really see why it had anything to do with infinity, but we thought that perhaps we should start applying those ideas to the black hole event horizon. So that's some collaborative work between the three of us, and that is, roughly speaking, where it started. It went on. Looks like I got rid of my beer glass. And here is a picture of Stephen, but I think this one is a little bit out of order. I think that was taken at Starmus.
Starshot. Yeah.
Yeah.
This one is Starmus.
Starmus.
Starshot.
You think it's Starshot?
No, no.
Oh, there's another one, Starshot. I think it's Starmus.
Yeah.
This is Stephen in Great Brampton House. We continued to work through the night, as you can see. A sort of smile. I guess that means we were getting somewhere. Hard at work. But we decided to take a bit of time off. Black Hole Lane really does exist. It's near Hereford, and we couldn't resist doing a photo op there. So there it is. You could also buy potatoes there. For £5 you get about half a hundredweight. In other words, 25 kilos. That again. This is Stephen on his 75th birthday. He had a party at his house. You can see he's obviously dressed up and having fun. Here he is, there was a conference on his 75th birthday, and here he is at that meeting. He's a friend of Daniel Craig, who sent him this bottle of champagne for his birthday. Jolly nice it was too. If you look carefully, you'll notice it's a magnum. Look, actually it's more than a magnum, it's a double magnum. Yeah, double magnum. There's 4 bottles of the usual stuff, so that was really quite nice. Here he is again at his 75th birthday. The blonde lady on the left is his daughter, Lucy, who is really sort of looking after things now. And, well, Stephen likes to have fun, so he went on one point on an ancient train. Here it is more close up. He wanted to go into space, so here he is training to be an astronaut in the zero gravity plane. Here he is with some friends in New York, and this was taken at Starshot. So this was his bodyguards there, and this is taken at Ground Zero.
No, those aren't his bodyguards.
New York City.
The cops.
Yeah.
No, the bodyguards didn't have the cover.
They were looking after him.
Yeah. In New York there were different people
Yeah.
than in
Yeah.
Boston.
Yeah. They were.
This one is a nurse, but these two are bodyguards. And here is a breakthrough Starshot. And here we are celebrating publication of a paper at some restaurant in Cambridge. Stephen doesn't like to be confined indoors much, so when he was in Boston, he insisted on visiting the Arboretum. Here he is. And this is to embarrass people sitting in the front row. At some point, Stephen decided his wheelchair was a bit slow, so he was wondering about moving into Formula One. And he was wondering about buying this train as well, but that never happened. So
Didn't you have them?
So, The Guardian, when Stephen died, The Guardian produced some pictures of what happened. And if you look here, this was put outside Gonville and Keyes College. It is unheard of for Cambridge College to do anything remotely like that. I've never seen anything like that happen before. So this is a memorial put outside. They put a guard outside the college to make sure that bad people didn't get in. And the idea was that they would go, those who did want to go, would go and sign a book of condolences. That's also something very unusual to happen for a Cambridge college. And people left flowers. Disappeared.